Once upon a time in a faraway land, there was a lonely toy maker named Geppetto. He spent his days in his little workshop, carving wooden toys that brought joy to children all around the village. One day, while strolling through the marketplace, Geppetto came across a peculiar-looking tree stump. It had the most beautiful grain he had ever seen, and instantly knew it would make an extraordinary toy. He took the wood home, began to carve, and soon had the figure of a wooden puppet in his hands. Geppetto couldn't stop staring at his creation. The puppet was so lifelike with its rosy cheeks, curly wooden hair, and big, bright eyes. As he looked at him, he couldn't shake off this strange feeling, like the puppet was already alive. "Oh, how I wish he could come to life," Geppetto whispered to himself. Just then, a shooting star streaked across the night sky and landed on the windowsill of Geppetto's house. Suddenly the room was filled with a bright light, and when it faded away, Geppetto found himself face to face with a beautiful fairy. "Geppetto, I heard your wish," the fairy said with a smile. "For helping me deliver messages to humans, I can grant you one wish. What would you like?" Geppetto hesitated. At first he had wished for his puppet to come to life, but now he wasn't sure if that was really what he wanted. He looked at the puppet, then back at the fairy. Finally he made up his mind. "Oh, fairy, please bring my puppet to life." The fairy waved her magic wand, and Pinocchio, the wooden puppet, suddenly twitched, then sat up. "Look, Geppetto, he's alive." Geppetto couldn't believe his eyes. He ran over and hugged Pinocchio. "Oh, my son, you're real." Pinocchio looked around in amazement. "Am I really alive?" he asked. "You are now," Geppetto said with a wink. "And I'm your father." Pinocchio threw his arms around Geppetto's neck. "Oh, father, I'm so happy to be alive. Can I go explore?" "Of course, Pinocchio," Geppetto replied. "But remember, always stay close to home. There are many dangers in the world for a wooden boy." Pinocchio promised to be careful and ran off to explore. At first everything was new and exciting, but soon Pinocchio grew bored. He wandered further and further away from his father's workshop until he came across a small clearing in the woods. In the middle of the clearing stood a large mansion, and Pinocchio couldn't help but feel curious. He walked closer and saw a sign hanging from the roof that read, "Beware, this house is haunted." Pinocchio wasn't scared. Instead, he felt even more intrigued. He knocked on the door, and before he could even introduce himself, it swung open. Standing in the doorway was a tall man with a sly grin and sharp, pointy ears. "So you must be the new addition to this town," he said. "I'm Honest John, and may I ask what brings you to my humble abode?" "I was just walking through the woods and got a little lost," Pinocchio replied. "Well, you're in luck," Honest John interrupted. "My master is looking for a new performing puppet, and I have a feeling you would be perfect for the job." Pinocchio thought for a moment. He did get bored easily, and performing seemed like a lot of fun. "That sounds great," he said. "I'd love to meet your master." They walked into the mansion, and Pinocchio noticed that the walls were covered with cobwebs and dusty old paintings. "Don't let the appearance fool you," Honest John said. "My master is a genius and has big plans for me and you." They reached the end of the hallway and came to a large set of doors. Honest John knocked 3 times, then pushed them open. Come in," a voice boomed. "I've been expecting you." In the center of the room sat a man on a throne made of gold and jewels. He had a long white beard and wore a crown on his head. "So you're the new puppet," he said. "I am king, and I want you to be my performing puppet." He gestured to a chair beside him. "Sit down and let us discuss the details of our contract." The king handed Pinocchio a scroll, which he couldn't read because it was written in a secret code. "Here's the contract," the king said. "If you sign it, You'll be mine forever." Pinocchio felt a sense of dread wash over him. Something about the king and his mansion gave him the willies. He remembered what his father had told him about staying close to home. But before he could protest, Honest John snatched the scroll and dipped his finger in ink. "Don't worry, Pinocchio," he said with a smirk. "It's just a formality." He signed the contract without Pinocchio's permission and handed it back to the king. "There you go, Your Majesty," Honest John said with a bow. "The contract has been signed." The king looked at Pinocchio. "Excellent. Now you are my property and there is no escape." Pinocchio tried to protest, but the king cut him off. "Silence! You are mine." As the king started to speak, a loud crash came from behind the throne. Pinocchio turned and saw Honest John fall to the ground with a gash on his leg. "Quick, get the ointment!" the king yelled. Honest John limped out of the room and the king turned back to Pinocchio. "Now where were we?" Pinocchio waited patiently, hoping for a chance to escape. Suddenly, another crash echoed through the room, and Honest John burst through the doors, this time with his entire leg bandaged. "You're right, Your Majesty," he said, panting. "I need some air." He stumbled outside and collapsed on a nearby bench. Pinocchio took his chance and ran to the door. As he opened it, he heard the king yell, "Stop! You can't leave!" Pinocchio didn't listen. He sprinted through the mansion and into the forest. He ran as fast as his wooden legs could carry him, not stopping until he reached his father's workshop. Bursting through the door, he cried, "Father, I need your help. That king, he's trying to keep me as his property forever." Geppetto hugged his son. "Don't worry, Pinocchio," he said. "No one will hurt you while I'm here." The next day, Geppetto took Pinocchio to visit the Blue Fairy, who had helped bring him to life. She was very upset to hear about the king's behavior. "That bully thinks he can treat others however he wants," she exclaimed. "He'll learn a lesson he won't forget." Before Pinocchio could ask what she meant, the fairy waved her magic wand, and poof, they disappeared. When Pinocchio opened his eyes, they were in the same clearing where he had met the king, except now there was a huge crowd of animals gathered around. "What's going on?" Pinocchio asked. "We're here to put an end to the king's tyranny," a squirrel chirped. "He's been bullying us poor woodland creatures for far too long, and we finally had enough." Suddenly a rabbit hopped forward. "I have an idea. We'll all march to the king's mansion and demand he apologizes to Pinocchio and releases him from his contract." "It's a brilliant plan," the owl hooted. "All for one and one for all." They all marched to the mansion, and Pinocchio's heart swelled with pride as he saw so many creatures standing up for him. The march went on for hours, and Pinocchio started to feel tired. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" he asked the Blue Fairy. "Trust me, Pinocchio," she replied. "This will be a valuable lesson for the king." Finally, they arrived at the mansion. The animals surrounded the building, and Pinocchio walked up to the door with the Blue Fairy by his side. He knocked 3 times, and the king's face appeared in the window. "What do you want?" he snapped. "We want you to release Pinocchio from his contract and apologize for mistreating him," the rabbit demanded. The king hesitated. He hadn't expected this. "Why should I?" he asked. Just then, the Blue Fairy raised her magic wand. "Because if you don't listen to these poor animals, I'll take away your power," the king gasped. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would and I will if I have to," the Blue Fairy replied. "Now choose wisely." The king looked at Pinocchio, then back at the Blue Fairy. "All right, you win," he said. "Pinocchio is free from his contract, and I apologize for treating him poorly." The animals cheered, and Geppetto ran to Pinocchio, hugging him tightly. "Oh, my son, I'm so proud of you," he said. "You showed bravery, kindness, and determination. Remember, these are the most important qualities of being a real boy." Pinocchio beamed, happy to have proven himself to his father. From that day on, Pinocchio never forgot the valuable lesson he learned. He continued to grow, not just in size, but in wisdom and character. And one day, after showing exceptional courage and selflessness, he was rewarded with the chance to become a real boy. Overjoyed, he embraced his father, thanking him for his love and guidance. Pinocchio's journey taught him that with hard work, honesty, and kindness, even a wooden puppet could achieve his dreams. And as for the Blue Fairy, she smiled, knowing that another child would soon have a chance at a wonderful life, thanks to the valuable lessons learned by a remarkable wooden puppet named Pinocchio.